Hi guys, Sean here from DigiDirect. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Sony RX100 Mark VII. Now this is Sony's newest addition on their high-end, high-performing compact lineup, and boy, they did not skimp out on features on this camera. They've taken a lot of things from their flagship A9 camera and put it into this. Now there's a lot to cover here, so without any further ado, let's take a look at the body of the RX100 Mark VII. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this because the body is almost identical to previous models. It's quite compact, although it does not have a fantastic grip. There's a good array of buttons and two control dials on the camera. There's a pop-up viewfinder that's small yet very high quality. It has a touchscreen that also tilts and flips all the way around, which is great for selfies or vloggers. Menu navigation is pretty straightforward, and they've added their My menu, which allows you to build your own custom menu. The biggest physical update here is the addition of a mic jack for external audio, which is quite rare on a compact and is really going to be appreciated by videographers. More on that later. Finally, the battery is still the BX1, which is fine, but you'll probably want to keep a spare or two on you because they don't last forever. So the RX100 Mark VII has a 20 megapixel 1-inch sensor inside of it, which is the same as previous models, although they have, it is a new sensor on this one, which is built to maximize the speed of the camera. And to that end, it features the same image processor as the A9 and A7R Mark III. But in terms of picture quality, this is the same high quality that we're used to seeing from the previous models. Very, very sharp, very detailed, a lot of resolution. Being a 1-inch sensor, it's good in low light compared to other compacts that typically have smaller sensors. So very high picture quality across the board. Looking at the lens, so in the Mark VI, they made a change from the previous models, and they changed the lens from an f1.8 to 2.8 24 to 70 mm lens to a 24 to 200 mm f2.8 to 4 lens. And that's the lens that we see on the Mark VII here as well. Now certainly some people are going to prefer the wider aperture, better for low light lenses on the older models, the Mark V and earlier. But I think they've made the right decision in sticking with the longer zoom range on the 7 here as well. You know, due to all the performance benefits that we're going to touch on in just a moment here, really makes this a very applicable camera for shooting sports or action or wildlife, which are all subjects where you might not be as close to the subject as you possibly could be, so the zoom is going to come in handy there. And just generally, being a compact camera, it's going to be a camera that you're going to want to carry with you all over the place, and having a long zoom range makes it a lot more versatile and just usable in a lot of different situations. And at f2.8 with the maximum aperture on this lens, that's still pretty fast. So I think they've made the right decision in staying with the longer zoom range over the faster aperture lens on this camera. It also has 4 stops of built-in image stabilization, which is going to help you when you are shooting at those longer focal lengths. And in a new feature on this model, that image stabilization now works in 4K video as well, finally. But let's talk about some of the performance metrics in this camera, because that's really the heart of this camera. So right off the bat, it has a fantastic autofocus system, which is really par for the course for Sony these days. It's a 357-point phase detect autofocus system, which covers 68% of the frame. And those are some slight improvements over the Mark VI. Also, in terms of maximum speed, it can top out at 0.02 seconds for acquiring autofocus, which is a little bit faster than the Mark VI, which maxed out at 0.03 seconds. So really, really fast at acquiring focus. Also, a new feature on this one, taken from the A9 again, is that it can make 60 autofocus calculations per second, which means that when you're dealing with anything, you know, tracking subjects, continuous autofocus movement, this is going to do a really good job at that. It's got a new AI-based real-time tracking system in it. It just makes moving subjects a real breeze to shoot. You know, these are typically things that are fairly challenging to shoot, and you can do them really quite easily in this camera. So a fantastic job. You can also utilize the touchscreen to select which subjects you want it to track. There's also improvements to Sony's popular eye autofocus feature. You can now use it on animals, you can toggle between which eye to focus on, and it now works in video shooting as well as stills. In terms of speed, the camera can shoot 20 frames per second with no viewfinder blackout. Again, a new feature taken from the A9. That's going to make it a lot easier to follow subjects that are moving because you're not kind of have the viewfinder kind of, you know, flashing on and off in front of you as you're doing that. So that's really good. And if 20 frames per second is not fast enough for you, the camera, another new feature, it can shoot 7-shot sequences at either 30, 60, or 90 frames per second. So if you really need that split-second timing, you can really achieve that with this camera. For video shooting, the camera can shoot 4K video at up to 30 frames per second, and as mentioned, the image stabilization now functions when shooting 4K as well, which is great. Now, like many Sony cameras, it oversamples when it's shooting that 4K video just to maximize the picture quality, and that's definitely something you can see because the picture quality here is very, very high. It looks really, really nice. Now, in continuous autofocus for video, as I already mentioned, it's very, very fast. Again, that eye autofocus also works in movie mode now, so when you've got any kind of movement in the frame and so on, it's going to do a great job at tracking your subjects. You can also shoot 1080p at up to 120 frames per second, and Sony's high frame rate mode returns here, allowing you to shoot up to 1,000 frames per second, albeit with decreasing picture quality the higher you jack up the frame rate. We've also got Sony's S-Log3 and HLG picture profiles in here for if you're shooting a flat picture profile for color grading or for HDR respectively. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, the addition of a mic jack here is a big deal for videographers. There's very few compact cameras that have external audio inputs. The Canon G7X Mark III, which was announced just last week, being really one of the only other ones I could name. But this is going to make this a lot more usable for vloggers and videographers in general, not just for vloggers. But the fact that it's got that flip-up selfie screen definitely is a vlogger-centric feature as well. Other things that are new, we've got time-lapse or intervalometer for shooting as well. You also have support for vertical video shooting if you're going to be shooting from mobile. And then video staples such as focus peaking and zebra stripes continue to be present in this camera as well. However, it's not all sunshine and roses. The RX100 lineup of cameras has been known for having issues in overheating when shooting in 4K, and unfortunately that still remains the case on the RX100 Mark VII. Now, Sony has added a new feature that will turn the camera off when it starts to overheat, but in my experience in testing with the camera, I was averaging about 7 minutes of continuous shooting in 4K before the camera would turn off. So if you're shooting shorter clips and so on, it's not a big deal. You can do that all day, but as soon as you try to shoot a long sequence, you're gonna max out at that 5 to 7 minute kind of range, which could be worked around, but you're gonna have to keep that in mind based on what you're gonna be wanting to shoot. Overall, the RX100 Mark VII is a fantastic camera. The only main negative I'm really going to be able to point to here is going to be the price. Now, I don't have exact pricing at the time of recording this video, but this is a premium performance camera. It's going to come at a premium price. There are going to be some people who don't need everything that this camera can offer, and they may look elsewhere for a lower cost option. But if you do need or do want at least the performance that this camera offers, it is undoubtedly the highest performing compact on the market by a long margin, and it frankly outperforms many larger sensor cameras as well. And the fact that you're getting all that performance in such a compact camera really is fantastic. Now, it's still more of a photographer's camera than a videographer's camera. Certainly it's made some strides, but that overheating issue in 4K still does hold it back a little bit for video, but if you can get around that, it does have some pretty impressive video specs as well. Now, the camera will be out soon. You can place a pre-order on our website at www.digidirect.com.au, or if you're watching this after the release date of the camera, feel free to come in store and you can test it out for yourself. We have stores in the Sydney CBD, Bondi Junction, Miranda, the Brisbane and Melbourne CBD, and Cannington, Western Australia, which is just outside the Perth CBD. Thanks, guys. Take care.